The reason for this presentation or this kōrero is not so much to tell you how to raise your children as such, but more to encourage you to think critically about a few issues. And I hope that when you leave from this presentation that you'll have them in the back of your mind when you're at home. The name of the presentation was A Deaf Child in the Family, and the session encourages families and whānau to think more critically about how they can include their children in their family life and to be mindful of the fact that their child is quite different and they may need to adjust themselves to facilitate that inclusion. So just some things that I think are helpful to do, and this is based on some of the research that I've done, and that research was based on talking to whānau like yourselves who had very young deaf children. Learn about how deaf children develop and grow and get information from really diverse sources. You know, you'll read stuff, you'll see stuff on the internet, you'll talk to professionals. I think it's also important to talk to other families in whānau who have deaf children, deaf people, children and adults, because especially adults, you know, they have really wonderful insights about what it's like to be a deaf person that a child can't express. So you might talk to a deaf adult who will say, well, this is what life is like as a deaf child in a hearing family or whatever. There'll be challenges that will be specific to your cultural group, whatever that may be. So, you know, it pays to get to know other families, other whānau who might come from a similar cultural background from you. When people hear stories from other people who have been there, done that, that's really, really powerful because they pick up on the nuances of, you know, how that can apply to their particular situation. And, so I think I really enjoyed having the deaf people telling their stories. I think that was probably the most powerful part of that, actually, because it kind of just shows an example that people they remember the story and they remember the person, they remember what they look like, they remember their mannerisms, they remember all those sorts of things. So yeah, I think that was really valuable. Yeah.
I am part of a large family. I am one of 9 children. I am the 8th oldest among them. And when I am at home, although it feels like home, I do feel like I miss out on what happens there. If I am in a family group of 2 or 3, I can just about manage. Any more than that, and I really struggle to keep up. The turn-taking is too quick to follow, and keeping up is just not possible, so that is a real problem, and meant that I was usually on the outer edge of any family gatherings, and had to really think about how to manage that for myself. For example, if I saw someone in the kitchen, I could approach them one-to-one and chat. So that was one strategy, and I learned from experience how to avoid situations I could not manage well. I don't think my family really fully understood the practical barriers I faced, so I learnt my own ways to try and make the best of it, to find my own ways of being included. But I was never fully involved like others were. It just wasn't possible, but I found other ways to manage. I think it's definitely best to grow up with a child having a range of experiences, such as exposure to multiple languages and cultures, as it means they grow up having the best of 2, maybe even 3 world views. There is more of a chance for the child to find a place for themselves. If they are prevented from entering, say, the Māori world because it is deemed as being too hard for them to access, or prevented from experiencing Dutch things in case it affects their English, the child grows up with only one option, decided by others, and they may resent that and wonder what they have missed out on. But if you give them access to all the options when they are young, they can grow up making those choices for themselves and find a place they are happy. For me, this means a place in 2 worlds, the deaf world and the hearing world.
I have a tip to share with you. Make sure your child can learn both worlds, the deaf world and the hearing worlds. Remember that there are ways that deaf and hearing cultures are quite different from each other. Also, please expose them to as much of your own culture as possible. They will undoubtedly appreciate your effort in this. Make sure that they are included in interactions with your friends and family. Help them to realise the world is a varied place, with lots of other cultures from all over the world. And people have a range of impairments, and this is common and natural. That teaches them the reality of life and living in the real world. Thank you.
The main thing I wanted people to walk away with was to show families the value of being connected to one another. If they try and get information from different, sources, a variety of sources, not just, through the internet and things like that, but also through social networks, then that really supports them in raising their children.